G'day and welcome to this week's FriBaT, Friday Beers and Tools. This week we're going to review another James Squire beer. This is the James Squire The Chancer. Those that have watched my previous FriBaTs will already know a little bit about James Squire, but very briefly, he was the first brewer in Australia. He came out on a convict ship, was sent to Tasmania and started brewing beer for the settlement, and won a pardon, and consequently went on to be known as the first brewer in Australia. Right, happy Friday. I like that beer. I don't think I've had a bad James Squire beer yet. The Chancer is a golden ale. It's 1.2 standard drinks, and it's 4.5% alcohol. It's a really nice golden ale. It's got sort of hints of toasted wheat and barley flavours to it. It's made with Amarillo hops, like one of the previous James Squire beers that I've reviewed before. I think that was the Swindler. This one's got quite a fruity tropical flavour, but it's still a nice golden ale. Not very hoppy, not very rich on the hops. Another beer that would be really nice with a steak. Very nice. Not too heavy, just a nice beer. Alright, a little bit of a different FriBaT this Friday. We're actually going to do an unboxing and a tool review of my new cold cut cutoff saw. And I'm also going to do a bit of a comparison between it and my old Makita Abrasive cutoff saw. When I say old, my Makita's only a couple of years old, hasn't had a lot of use. I had a cheaper one previously, nowhere near as good as the Makita, but I'll get onto that soon. Alright, I'll put a picture up here, or here, I think there, of the Evolution Rage 2 cold cut cutoff saw. One of the big advantages of these type of saws is that they are a TCT blade, so not an abrasive blade. So therefore you don't get all of the dust, and if anyone's ever used an abrasive cutoff wheel or a grinder, it's a big version of a grinder wheel, you get dust and crap going everywhere. Pardon me, quite gassy that bit. As a consequence, especially today with the increasing awareness and concern with silicosis, anything that produces dust, sand dust, sanding, or any of the grinding wheels which are sand based, silicosis is becoming the next asbestosis. If you're doing lots of grinding, lots of sanding, or even not lots, if you're doing any, you should be wearing face protection. I will show you a video in a minute where I did 2 cuts with the abrasive saw. I did it outside and I did 2 cuts, that was all. Normally if I was doing any fabrication work with the abrasive saw, I would be wearing a P2 respirator when using it. So that's advantage number 1 to the Evolution Rage 2. It's a cold cut saw. So being a TCT blade, it's not actually an abrasive blade. The blades, the wheels, the blade is quite expensive, but they are sharpenable, which is a big advantage as well. But let's talk more about the saw first. It's a, pardon me, I need a beer. It's a 355mm diameter saw, or in American terms 14-inch diameter. It has a 2200 watt motor, which is okay power wise, but it is geared, and they travel at much lower RPM than a traditional abrasive saw. In this case it only runs at 1450 RPM, whereas abrasive saws are normally double that, around 3800 RPM. So it seems to be powerful enough. obviously I just unboxed it, so it's brand new, but I think will agree with when I show you the footage of cutting through. It's about 50mm box, not quite, about 40mm box, and it's a fairly decent thick sidewall. It's probably about 2mm, 1.8, 2mm sidewall. It went through it like butter, and when you compare it speed wise to the abrasive cutoff wheel, you'll see the big advantage there too. Evolution Rage 2 has been around for a while. Rage 2 sort of indicates that there was a Rage 1, so this is the second version of this saw. It got really good reviews all around the world, and it comes with a 3-year warranty, which is pretty good. That's actually better than what the Makita saw comes with, and I'll talk about that soon. The other advantages of a TCT blade is that it cuts steel, aluminium, wood, especially if you know that you've got some nails in some wood. It's not a problem for this. And it generates very, very little sparking, whereas again, if you've used an abrasive saw before, you know they generate not only a lot of dust, but can generate a lot of sparks. There is almost no heat whatsoever when you're cutting through steel, and you'll see that in the video. I can touch the end immediately after I've cut it. It's warm, but it's not hot. The abrasive wheel, you can't touch it, you can't go anywhere near it for 5 or 10 minutes because it gets that hot, almost red hot. Evolution claims that it's 4 times faster in cutting than the abrasive type saws. It has a swivel clamp on the base, which I didn't really show you on the video, but you can move the base up to from 0 to 45 degrees so that you can get 45-degree cuts for miter cuts. And the TCT blade that comes with it has 36 teeth. You can get more teeth for different types of material. I think more teeth for the stainless steel. This will cut it, but obviously more specific blade for specific material. From people that I know that own this saw and other reviews that I've read, the standard blade cuts anything that you want and lasts a long time. As I mentioned, it spins at 1450 RPM, and the box manufacturer claims up to 6mm thick plate steel. I think it will do more than that. Obviously they've done that for warranty. They have a reputation for being louder than an abrasive saw, and you'll also see from the video I did a little quick sound level check, and there was absolutely no difference. Both it and the abrasive saw were both 77 decibels at about 1 meter, and I use hearing protection. That's just my safety orientation. You should, whenever doing those sort of things, 77 decibels, although not traditionally loud, is loud enough to damage your hearing over time. So wear hearing protection with it. Right, so that's all of its pros. A couple of cons. This saw is $508 Australian. Not that much dearer than the dearer, the top end abrasive saws. They're around about $400, and there are other branded cold cutoff saws. I think DeWalt do one. I don't think Makita do one. There's a couple other brands, and they're up in the $700-800 mark. So at $508, it's actually a good value saw. I think they're probably the higher dollar saws are slightly more powerful, but again, when you see this cut through this steel, I think it's got plenty of power at 2200 watts. The other con is that the blade, the wheel, is expensive. They're around about $100 for a blade, but as I mentioned, they are sharpenable, and I have a mate who uses one in his, he's a metal worker by trade, and he has 2 blades and he gets one sharpened, and he said that lasts for ages. You get lots and lots of cuts out of them. So that's the cons. what do I give the Evolution Rage 2, given that it's brand new and just did my unboxing this afternoon for this video? Let's talk about value first. At $508, I think if you're starting out with your setting up your shed, your workshop, it's probably an expensive saw, and I think most people will be able to live with an abrasive saw because they're considerably cheaper. You can buy a very cheap one for less than $200, and even the bottom of the range Makita is only $219. So there is a fair bit of saving there in dollars. As far as the cold cut-off saw, again, the big advantages are that they're not messy. They do throw some chips, some steel chips, but unlike the abrasive saw, you don't get dust and crap going everywhere. And if you're like me and you like trying to keep your workshop clean and tidy, abrasive saws in workshops is a pain in the neck. Not to mention that if you've got any vehicles anywhere nearby and the abrasive dust settles on them, it's not only dust, but it also has metal in it as well and will cause rust spots. So for value for money at $508, I would put it at a, compared to other cold cut saws, I would put it at least a 4.5 beers out of 5. If you're just starting out and you're setting up and you want a big cut-off saw, if you're doing some, welding up some tables or legs or whatever, and you just want to set up cheaply as possible, go and get a cheap abrasive saw, use it outside, away from your shed. It's easy to clean up then. But as far as the Evolution Rage 2, I've been wanting one of these for a long time because I'm sick of the abrasive saw mess, and I think it's a solid 4.5 beers out of 5 for value. For functionality, I kind of need a 6 beer rating for this because 5, it's top of the range. The speed that it cuts through steel, it just goes like a hot knife through butter, coupled with no dust, very little sparking, and not a lot of cleanup, just some chips, some steel chips to clean up. It's a winner for me, and I'm glad I bought it ready for my retirement. All right, let's talk about its cheaper competitor and what I've had for a long time. I have had a Makita, well, not that long, a couple of years, Makita 355mm or 14-inch abrasive cut-off saw, and I believe my model is a LW1401, which is a 2400 watt motor, so 200 watts more than the Evolution Rage 2. But as I said, they're not geared. This one runs at 3800 RPM. Makita give a 2-year warranty with this saw, so 1 year less than the Evolution, and it does a good job. They're nowhere near as nicer cuts as a cold cut saw. You get a lot of burrs. So again, from a business perspective, time taken in cleaning up the cuts from an abrasive saw, you have to have a flap wheel grinder handy and clean all the edges up because they're sharp as hell, and there's burrs everywhere. That's more dust, more time, so that's one of its biggest cons. Very dirty and dusty. They do cut much slower, but again, if you're setting up a home workshop, speed's not so much of the essence because you're not charging by the hour. It's for your own work. The abrasive wheels are also very cheap. I think you can pick them up for around about $9 or $10 a wheel, but you do go through them. If you're doing lots of cuts, you will go through abrasive wheels just like you do with grinding wheels. Makita's top of the range abrasive cut-off saw is about $419. That's the LW1400. That's one above the one that I have. As I mentioned, mine, the LW1401, is about $319, $320, and their bottom of the range, which only is a 2000 watt motor, so 400 watts less, is the M2401G, I think it is, which is around about $220. I do like the name brand of Makita. I've got a lot of Makita tools, as you will know, and I did replace a very cheap Harbor Freight in Australia, Bunnings home brand type abrasive cut-off saw, which I think probably 5 or 6 years ago was only around about $100, $120, and it worked fine. One of the big advantages of the higher level saws is that they usually have a more sturdy base plate and you get less movement, so you get more accurate cuts. The one thing I did notice going from a very cheap abrasive cut-off saw to the Makita was I got much more accurate horizontal cuts. And the Evolution is the next step again. It's even more rigid and good quality. You will note in the video, one thing that I kind of wish Evolution had done with their Age 2 is the clamping mechanism has to be unscrewed all the way. The Makita has a flip over screw thread. It enables you to unlatch it, slide it out if you're doing a large piece, flip it back over, wind it in on the screw thread. The Evolution, it's all screw thread. That is a real advantage of the Makita. Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing that I think Evolution should look at putting on some sort of similar method. One thing I didn't talk about with the Makita's rated max cutting thickness is 10mm steel, so it's actually 4mm larger than what the Evolution quote. Again, I think the Evolution will have no problem cutting 10mm steel. So the Makita, the lower versions, the $219 version, the 2000 watt version that is, probably perfect for someone just setting up or starting out in setting up their own home workshop. I went for the mid-range when I replaced my very cheap saw with the LW1401. It has a heavier base, it's a heavier saw overall, 2400 watt motor, and as I said, it was about $320. I don't see a lot of difference between it and the $420 LW1400. It's slightly heavier again, but really I don't think there's $100 worth of extra value in it. So if you're starting out, go for a Makita abrasive cut-off saw. You deal with the dust and the dirt and the need for a respirator, and of course eye protection. Any sort of cut-off you have to have eye protection on. And it's a relatively cheap way into the market for that sort of thing. If money's not quite so much of an issue for you, or you just want to buy a quality saw to begin with, go for the Evo. It's a lot better saw. Yes, it's dearer, but it's a lot better saw. So many more advantages. Anyway, let's get back to the Makita. Value for money. The base model is very good value for money. My model is probably similar. I think both the base model and my model at $219 and $319. I think the base model is definitely a 5 out of 5 beers for value. Mine's probably back to about a 4.5, 4 beers out of 5 for value. The top of the range abrasive, I don't think it's good value at all. The middle one's probably not bad, but again, if you're on a budget and you're starting out, go for the cheaper one. 5 out of 5. For functionality, the more you spend on a saw, comparing a very cheap no-name saw to a Makita, even the bottom of the range, you're getting a better quality saw, better quality cuts, less time fixing up not so square edges. Yes, you're going to be dressing all the edges anyway because that's the way abrasive saws work. But the more money you can spend, the better quality saw you get generally. So for functionality, even the low range Makita or the mid range Makita saw are both, I can't give it 5 because I hate the dust and the burrs and the cleanup required. Probably a 3.5 out of 5 beers for functionality, as opposed to the Evo. Anyway, that's it for this week's Friday Beers and Tools. Nice beer. Hope you enjoyed that. Please like, share and subscribe. Pass it on to somebody else who you might think might find something interesting in these segments. I will put this one into the unboxing and review playlist as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week. See ya.